Hi everyone, I'm Almas. I'm the founder and the CEO of Xperience Wave. Today we will be starting with a podcast series called Design Beyond Aesthetics. I have with me Shaik Murad, who is my co-founder at Xperience Wave. Murad, would you like to introduce yourself, talk about yourself, please?
Sure, Almas. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm Shaik Murad. Like Almas mentioned, I at this point of time head design as well as a little bit of learning and development as well. In the past, I have worked with multiple industries. Some to quote, I have worked with industrial automation, banking, a little bit on the e-commerce, but more on the lines of fintech and wealth management as well.
I also, on the other hand, have been a part of SaaS-based industries, health tech, fintech. I have worked in capacities of being a developer, a designer, and a product manager. So I have seen it all.
Yeah.
As to how the transition goes from being a junior. I was a developer when I started to now being an entrepreneur.
I think that's a very good journey to take up in order to be an entrepreneur, because you can build an empathy towards almost every other person
role
you
that is out
encounter,
there.
is it?
So right now, at Xperience Wave, I take care of business, operations, sales, and these are some of the roles that I haven't handled in the past, and now I get to explore them as well. So it's like there's a saying, right? Jack of all, master of none. I think that
Jack of all.
so I get to fall into that category is what I tend to
Right.
believe.
My journey was rather very straightforward. I started as a associate UX engineer. Yeah, that's what the label was. And then moved on to being a senior UX designer, lead UX designer, design manager, and then AVP design. And then here I am, you giving me the position of head of design. So yeah.
Yeah. So we basically started this organization to help senior designers. Although we work with businesses in the capacity of servicing them, providing them design services, we majorly focus on learning and teaching senior level designers. And we have seen a lot of, we have spoken to a lot of designers in the past 2 years, mostly from a one-on-one conversation level. And I think it calls for the need. Those conversations called for the need of this podcast, where we are trying to break the shackles these designers have put themselves into, or the industries have put them into, where they have constrained themselves towards being on the aesthetic side of it. They do not want to look at how scientific design can be associated as to a designer. So that's the reason why we are, starting with this podcast, trying to break those stereotypes designers are put into right now.
To be a little more specific, Almas, I think in the past 1 year, we have spoken to about 1,300 UX designers.
Oh, you have a count?
Do have a count here, and that too, this is a one-to-one conversation, not like a survey ran. And what we have spoken to mostly is someone who has about 6 years of experience in corporate, maybe a designer or a non-designer background. And we also have spoken to people who actually span up until 26 years of experience as well.
Yeah.
And that's what really brings us to the point of conversation today, where I have noticed at various instances that the organizations don't really understand as to how to position UX designers and how to really get the work done from them, because sometimes there are people who are only just making use of their positions in order to drive the decisions. It does not really matter as to whether the decisions are right or wrong, but because I am in the capacity, I'm going to drive them. And what happens in these cases with respect to the specialists? Like, I keep thinking about this. Imagine that there was a surgeon, and then you go to the surgeon and then say that, dude, that's not how you exactly operate, because I am the director of the hospital. And I want to know as to what exactly would be the conversation between these two people are going to be. And that's exactly what a designer is supposed to feel as well. When he comes and says that, you know what, I'm the one who actually gets to choose the color. And I'm the one who actually gets to choose what typography, what kind of user journey are we supposed to take. And then there's this a product owner, business analyst.
They come and like, even no, my wife likes the other color, so you have to choose.
Yeah, and that goes on as well. And I think there are people who have sat in the conversations and then said that, Murad, what happens? I mean, why don't I have a decision power? There are people who have about 2 years of experience starting as product managers and then coming and telling me that, no, you don't get to choose. Yeah. Why am I sitting over here for? And you're questioning your abilities, you're questioning your ways of understanding what design, what product delivery is supposed to be as well. Yeah. And that's basically what brings us here. I think I love the title, Design is Beyond Aesthetics, and that's basically what we would like to discuss today.
Murad, I think it's been around 2.5 years since we started.
Yeah.
Xperience Wave. I think we did not even call it Xperience Wave when we started it. Would you like to share your story about how did this business as an idea come to you?
Mas, I think I have been always wanting to be an entrepreneur. I I remember when I think of it now, I remember selling drumsticks because we had a tree in the backyard, and I have been giving tuitions since I was in seventh standard as well.
Oh, wow.
And the last we spoke, like about 4 years ago, I remember us setting up a very small course. And the first time we taught, we had 4 UX designers. And I think that's where it all started.
Gotcha.
And it appears like we took our own sweet time to actually get to the stage where we got back to training. We, of course, tried product design, brand design, and product development. That definitely is another vertical that we handle even today as well.
Yeah.
But with the completion of masters in psychology and then aiming for PhD, it definitely felt like training is something that I want to make as a long time goal of my life. And that's how it fits.
Because you started, you told me you used to tuition people even back when you were in school.
Right.
So maybe it stems from the roots that,
Yeah.
it's there, that teaching, training to a lot of students might come natural to you.
Right.
Yeah.
So I had this one friend who also himself is an entrepreneur.
Okay.
He is into a marketing field.
Okay.
And I must have met him about 3 years ago, and then he comes and says, Murad, I heard the word entrepreneur from you when we were back in school for the first time.
Okay.
And why exactly are you working in a 9 to 5 job?
Okay.
And sometimes it is required that someone else comes and tells you exactly as to who you were in the past. And of course, I mean, that
life has happened to you. And why haven't you,
got
fallen back to what you used to believe in?
I don't think I gave so much of thought once he said so, but it definitely is something that I always wanted to be in. And here we are. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Even I, like I said in the beginning, I have seen it all. So as a designer, as a developer, when I started, I got to work with a lot of designers, and I saw how especially because I got to work with US based designers, I did not see a lot of friction between designers and developers, because they had their own processes and things set up in such a way that uh, I though I looked at it from a developer's perspective, I never understood what a designer was going through. But when I stepped into the shoes of being a designer, I saw that they were gate kept from a lot of business related case studies. How uh, how should a designer look at it from the business point of view? So that was not given as a visibility to a designer.
Right.
And even now, like we have spoken to a lot of designers, I think even the designers don't take up the initiative of looking at it from the business point.
No matter how much ever we blame on the other side.
Other side.
Yeah.
Yes, organizations do limit you at some point of time, but I think it is also in your capacity to break those shackles and show what you are capable of. Show them that if you look at it from a business point of view, if you look at a solution or a product or anything from a business point of view, how the company or the organization or the stakeholders will look at you from a different lens. So that is required as well. And then
it hasn't been easy either.
Yeah.
I remember us facing so many issues while we got started with partners, especially
In
technology
yes,
partners, um, payment gateway partners.
partner
I think that's where we have definitely faced a lot of issues as
in the
well.
past 2 years. Yes, yeah.
It even now we actually face a lot of issues, but it just seems like that's the
It's
part
a
and
part and the
parcel now,
parcel
and we
of,
have to just
yeah.
live by that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Although we have learned how to go about tackling it, back then it used, since we were new to it, it all felt like a big deal.
Right.
Now we know that it just comes, and we have to got to deal with it, and you know things work out when they have to.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how Experience Wave came in place, and yeah, we are here. We have almost served around 2,000 plus designers at this
Right.
point of time.
Yeah.
We have tried to teach them uh, design from the business point of view, uh, especially business driven. How to establish yourself as a business driven UX designer is something which we focus upon,
I think
and
that's the first book we wrote,
as well.
um,
Yes,
where the focus was more on the lines of, if you are a UX designer and you were never said in the past that you were also supposed to take care of the business delivery as well. And that book did go well.
well, yeah,
We have, it's a very short book, and we have about 2,000 people who have bought it.
yeah. So far, yes,
Yeah.
yes. So that's how Experience Wave has been doing well so far. Murad, let's get into the first segment of this podcast. I would like to speak about the overemphasis of visual design that is given in the field of user experience. So, to that, I would like to ask, how do you think social media has influenced how designers or people who are perceiving or aspiring to be design, how are they influenced?
Right. Um, Mas, I think social media definitely is very powerful. And designers are those people who are well advanced with respect to, are quite proficient when it comes to technology usage as well. And so is the case with social media behavior. Um, so there are these videos that run. There is a lot of data that actually runs on the heading of how to create a logo for UX designers. And I don't know how that fits in. Like, how exactly are UX designers trying to learn what a logo creation process is supposed to be? Um, and in most of the cases, you will notice that when such kind of selling comes into picture, where you're more worried about views rather than what really happens behind the screens, right? You tend to ignore the fact that design is more about people. If you try to ignore that particular aspect out of the entire process, you have actually removed the entire pulp of that fruit, and you're only talking from the skeleton perspective. And when you try to make things oversimplified, and that's basically how the entire social media is filled at this point of time, especially with respect to making short reels, making those YouTube videos which have really good hooks, where people look at it and then they will be like, oh, this is what user experience design is. But in that oversimplification, we have just killed out all the reality of the design.
Right.
And
So I was also speaking to these designers recently. When I said we do these one-on-one conversations, so I got to hear from some of these designers where they are like, there's a lot of content on YouTube or Instagram. There are a lot of coaches also who are teaching design, but very specific or very centric towards tools, or how to make use of
Right.
Figma, how to make use of mostly Figma. Figma is doing
Mostly
great.
Figma,
I would definitely say kudos to that. But
that's a recent one though.
yeah, it's a very recent one, and I hear them saying that um, there is no one that they have come across who have identified that there is a gap within designers when it comes to research, when it comes to how to transition your research data towards UI designs.
Right.
So there is nobody who's filling that gap for the designers. Everybody is just focusing on tools. Everybody is just focusing on how to make things look good. um, I so
And I
that
think
is where,
actually leads to confirmation bias, right?
yeah,
You have seen a lot of people coming ahead and then telling you that, are you a UX designer? You got to learn Figma. And then someone else comes and says, are you a UX designer? You got to learn how to actually make logo. Someone else comes and says, oh, you have no clue about how exactly to mix the colors, bring in the color harmony. So you have been exposed to that fact that you got to get better at these things.
Looking good things.
Making them
things look pretty.
look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
And now if you go ahead and then tell that, while those are important aspects themselves,
Yeah.
but what you are really not talking about is, like you just said, research, data analysis, structuring an entire design strategy, creating a very complete UX module. These are some things that people don't even understand that they need it.
Yeah. So when we run those research webinars,
Yeah.
that's what happens. We get to talk to so many designers by the end of those webinars. That's when they come to us and they say that, this is one of a kind. We have never come across anyone who has filled this gap for us. We have searched, we have taken up Google certifications, we follow a few influencers on YouTube, on Instagram. They have never been able to fill this gap for us, which you guys have been able to do it. So but I feel really proud when that happens, and the fact that we have been able to cater and identify that there is this gap, which has been predominantly existing and nobody has been able to address it.
Absolutely. How I kind of see this is a lot of people are actually convinced at this point of time. Like I said, we have spoken about 1,300 designers in just the past 1 year, right? I must have come across at least 20-30% of these designers who are convinced in their head that they don't need all this. This is all shit for them. Where you're
What do you
talking
mean
about
all this?
with respect to research, with respect to knowing data analysis, they feel like this is all not necessary, especially when it comes to Indian market. They feel like that's not what the stakeholders are asking for. That's not what their business owners, people who actually give money or recruitment asking for. And that's basically where we started with the first webinar, which was more on the lines of user research. And I remember still, trying to understand as to if we had to create user research webinar, we had to know that this was not just about having the skills.
Yeah.
This was not about the skills where you learn how to execute research alone, because no matter how much ever you know,
are you capable of doing the research?
you will not be able to sell it because your organizations might not let you do that. So I still remember us sitting and then creating the 5-step blueprint solely for one reason alone.
Yeah.
That is, how exactly will you go about in step-by-step process in order to understand as to where is your culture, what is your organization doing at this point of time, what are the project's needs, and will you ever be able to integrate user research within your organization? Because no, it's not possible all the time. You can educate them, you can sensitize your organizations, you can let them know that there is business value that you can drive from them, but it's up to them. Sometimes there are organizations who would never understand the value. So in those cases, if you're trying to introduce user research, it might not just work out.
Yeah.
And
those are low maturity. They fall into the
low design maturity organizations,
and it's better for designers to stay away from these. Stay clear from them.
But sometimes we just get desperate, Almas. I mean,
yeah,
no matter who gives the money, and then if you ask me to make chai also, I'm going to do that. If you could give me some.
That doesn't mean you are serving the purpose of being a designer, right?
I think that's where the label has to come, that I'm a tea seller rather than calling myself as a UX designer.
Let's get into the second segment of this podcast, how deliverables are just the tools, but not the final outcomes. This gets me to the question as to what are the different kinds of deliverables UX designers get to look at, and why is it that these designers overemphasize these deliverables too much?
I love this segment. I'll tell you why. Because we believe in the fact that it's outcomes that we were supposed to drive. And what has happened is, over the course of user experience designers' journey, right? They start believing the fact that the more deliverables that they can deliver, the better they can position their portfolios in the recruitment processes.
Okay.
And over and over, you actually will get to see that people talking about how exactly have they been able to dump personas. And it does not it does not in reality say that they know how to make use of the personas in order to really drive the value.
They just do it as a part of the process.
Yes, because they have been said so, because that's what designers are supposed to do. And that goes on for almost every other concept. Well, I'll get to your first question, which is what are different deliverables that they create? And there are quite a few. Maybe when they get started, they have vision models. When they get into the groove, they get to an understanding of setting up design strategies, UX models, and then they create research reports, data analysis reports. They also create concept sketches, lo-fi designs, hi-fi designs. I'm really missing out on a lot of deliverables in between as well, such as information architecture, user journey mapping, personas, which actually become a part of user research report as well. And of course, once you create the solutions, you also conduct the testing. So there is a testing report too. There is design system, design guidelines as well. So there are really quite a lot.
Yeah.
So what do we overemphasize on out of all of these deliverables when we speak of is generally the visual designs.
Visually, yeah.
Now, why has this happened is a big question to really ponder over, because that is what we have been able to bring down the entire user experience design towards. And when you go and ask even a layman as to what is a UX designer, what do you think a UX designer does? And they generally come out and then say that you are those people who actually fill in those colors or create those prototypes and then give right.
Do you think it's our mistake that as designers, we have just been associating ourselves too much towards visual designs, where we are the people who make things look good,
Right.
and that has grown into other people's perception as well, and that's the reason why they come and be like, oh, UX designer, tum log to drawing karte ho, color banate ho.
Right.
Right?
I think it's a twofold problem. Many a times our stakeholders come and tell that do what I'm asking of, and their expectations have been limited to the fact that I have an idea in my head, can you make it appear pretty? And in these particular cases, you don't want to make enemies out of your bosses, right?
Right.
These are the people who actually give you promotions. So you end up creating solutions that they want. You don't care about the fact that are you really solving the problem or not.
Yeah.
So in those cases, you still want to add value. So you're not getting to actually solve the problem. So what do? You do things which you are extremely comfortable with, which is picking the colors and then putting things around. So out of all the deliverables that I just got to list, I think
what do you think is their real purpose?
The purpose of each of these deliverables?
Yeah.
Oh, let me quote a few of them for you. For example, say personas. Now, the real purpose of having a persona is to internally build an empathy towards the user segment who has to make use of the system. But that's just one part of it. The real purpose of persona is you anyway will build empathy, dude. You are a designer. You got to spend time with these people. You got to get closer into the user's life, got to get into their shoes. You will do it. That's your job. But you haven't seen your developers still getting empathy towards UX designers. You haven't seen your marketing team, sales team getting as close to users like the way you have done. So personas are supposed to storytell, introduce a character in such a picturesque way that
the rest of the domains, the rest of the departments
also start understanding as to who the user is. Not just understand. If you want to ever see whether you have introduced personas in the right way or not, the best validation is when someone stops telling that if I were a user, I wouldn't have used that system. Because the moment they stop telling that if I were a user, they have started to agree to the fact that Rohit, for whom the persona is created, this is the guy who is going to make use of the system. And you have started to think from the fact that I, as a developer, I, as a product manager, know about the system a little too much than what a user could ever have done.
Okay.
And that's the right way of validating when you stop telling, say, for example, I gave you a solution and then you came and said that, Murad, I wouldn't use this solution. I would actually come back to you and then say that, Almas, you're the CEO of the organization. You know a little too much about the product. So you will never be the user whom we would like to serve. We have a user whose name is, say, for the sake of conversations, Rohit. He is going to make use of this particular system. And when you come out to me and then say, Rohit wouldn't like this system, I would love this. That's what the real validation of the personas is. That's about persona. Say, for example, user journey mapping. It helps you as well as the organizations start understanding as to how holistically a system is delivering to the user's needs. Okay. Otherwise, right? I mean, we as people who have to drive solutions, we would like to put shackles as much as possible, just focus on what is like right in front of us, because it's rather very easy for us to identify as to what goals we have to achieve. And when everybody starts focusing upon only smaller segments of it, there are these silos which start emerging. Right. And you wouldn't understand as to where exactly is the experience breaking, because everybody has started to look only from very small pieces perspective. And when you build these user journey maps, everybody starts understanding as to how exactly does a user's journey begin even before he has acquired bought your product, and what really happens when he's using the product, what really happens after he has used the product as well. Someone who has such a view towards the products and the services gets to really take a lot better decisions. And that's when you start realizing that you have done a good job, not just about your own roles, but also bringing all the rest of the people together in building the empathy towards the users. Right. Uh, of course, I mean, there is information architecture where you can make use of, build structuring the site maps, structuring the content inventories as well. And this is very much required because I'll give you a very simple example that I keep using a lot of times. Say you were an e-commerce platform, okay, and you're a grocery shop, and you want to set up an e-commerce platform. So you have milk as a product that you want to sell. Yeah. Now, when you have to sell milk as a product, you have to make navigation easy. You have to identify as to where exactly should you position the milk, right? Right. You might be thinking that I, as a person, I, as a user, would try to find milk under dairy. Whereas I am forced by my wife to get up early in the morning and then go get milk every day. So for me, what is that? It's the first product that I buy in the morning. Right. So maybe that is what I would like to find on my application when I try to open it up. If I don't think I come, yeah. Okay. And if you try to say that, no, it's a dairy, no, it is a grocery, then I will not be able to find it. And that's where information architecture comes in a picture. It tries to map out the hierarchies, the kind of groupings that I as a user actually have in my head. Based on that, create a searchable navigation, okay, such that I have an extensible representation of how new modules, new products will also be added to it, and users are at ease because they are finding where they have to find all the products that they have. So while I did not speak of the deliverables such as wireframes and visual designs, because I mean, come on, everybody really thinks that that's what we create, but they also have their purpose. They definitely help in being the props in a bigger storytelling. Yeah. Because sometimes people will not be able to relate to what story I want to tell. So that's where the screens are getting generated as well. And so is every other thing. So I think the bigger purpose that the deliverables usually achieve is you want to achieve an outcome. So identify as to what kind of deliverables you would like to create in order to achieve that outcome. Rather than just enforcing yourself thinking that I am a designer, I understand a particular design process, and I'll make sure that no matter what happens, I will create a research report, I will create a persona, I will create a user journey map.
Is this what is a part of your workshop as well, where you introduce them to a curve system? No?
Right. Yeah.
You speak of how do you transition your research deliverables into proper UI designs, where a lot of designers struggle to even set up the initial part of it, the research part, the data analysis part. People directly jump towards creating the final deliverables, which are wireframes and visual designs. Uh, there is a good chunk of designers who don't even get to the initial part of it. Right. And when they are given a chance to do so, they struggle to do it.
It's interesting while you talk about this, right? We first figured out a research framework, which is a 5-step blueprint to identify how to integrate user research within the organization. And then we again figured out a spear framework to identify as to if you had to build a research strategy, how exactly should you structure your approaches such that you're not missing out on the important aspects of being a researcher.
Right.
And of course, after that, we also taught them how to pick a research method, how to employ it, how to execute it, how to report it. And right after this, I think what I got to hear.
Yeah, I think we also get to the point of the fact that there are so many research methods that are out there, and designers struggle to identify which is the right method.
Amas, I
Yeah.
don't think they struggle. I think a lot of UX designers are convinced
That they only have to do interviews and
interviews
surveys.
or surveys.
Yeah.
And what's funny
Mm.
is just because you know how to ask a couple of questions to someone does not really mean that you have already honed the capabilities of being an interviewer.
Mm.
As simple as a question, such as what do you have in the breakfast? Now, this is what did you have in the breakfast is a very simple question, and this can be translated into a leading question in so many ways.
Oh.
Instead of really asking, what did you have in the breakfast? If I go and ask someone as to, did you have idli vada or something else? You know, what did I do here? I actually led them into thinking that maybe I was supposed to, maybe they were supposed to answer me across idli vada or maybe South Indian dishes, and then maybe also have a tea as well. So, even the kind of questions that you phrase are very important. And when you sit in those environments, those labs, and then start asking the question, you would understand that building rapport, ice breaking, creating a purpose which you actually follow through the entire conversation is in itself, I think, a very deep skill that people hone after spending years and years.
And that's what you do as well. In your sessions with one-on-one sessions with the designers who we are working with, we make sure we if interview is a way of going about for the project that they are building, we the best way to assess if they're doing a good job or not, we make them uh, have a setup where they are interviewing people, record it, and share it with you.
Oh, yeah.
And you assess it, you analyze it, you give them directions
Right.
from the point whether they are doing a good job or not. Right?
And while you're speaking about it, I have come across really good people whom I have worked with as well. I remember Divya. So the first time she shared a recording with me.
Already
And
comes from the architectural background.
yep, you are
Yep.
aware of her.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I think it's about someone just coming and telling them that you're supposed to get better at research, at interviews. And the first time she had a conversation, she shared with me on a mobile phone as to how the recordings are supposed to be, how would she ask the questions and all. And the next time when she had shared that video, I myself feel like all they wanted was a little push in the right direction in
Yeah.
understanding as to you did a bad job with ice breaking, and they know how exactly to put efforts into it and then make it better. Sometimes preparation in itself just goes a long way.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'll just continue on the other part as well.
Mm.
So while we taught them how exactly to take up the research as a first part, but then we realized that they have this data, and yet they don't know what to do with this data, and that's where the curve system came into picture. So curve stands for converting user research into excellent valuable UI excellence. And we make use of three specific frameworks over here: strategy, structure, and delivery. So this is all structured on the lines of what do you do with this data, how do you convert them into various deliverables, which are not meant on the lines of just creating a process. This is meant to drive the outcome.
Right.
And in these particular regards, we actually talk about a lot of data comprehension models, not limited to, but personas, information architecture, empathy maps, mind maps, cognitive maps, concept maps, and moving on to user journey maps, task analysis diagrams, and then getting on to the fact that how exactly is all of this actually helping you in either creating UI designs or, for that matter, influencing the entire decision making on the entire product experience as well.
Got it. So you do this for 2 days in a 2 days time. This workshop, how does this go?
Right. With respect to webinar, we have a very structured conversation for about 3 hours straight, where people get to really understand as to how to integrate user research within an organization in a practical approach, how to really pick up a proper user research, build a user research strategy, how to execute it end to end. We are focused more on the lines of how to perform mixed research method. That's where we speak of both qualitative and quantitative research, but this is on the webinar that happens for 3 hours. On the other side, the curve system that I was talking about, we take it for 2 long days, starting from about 9 o'clock to up until 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock or so. Depends really upon how
The days are structured.
the days are structured, as well as how people are responding to on the other side as well. And these are very streamlined conversations, and very good things to hear on the other end when I have completed conversations. Maybe I don't know, at least these webinars that I have run must have spoken to about 600 UX designers up until now.
Yeah, yeah.
And workshops, although are recent, we must have definitely spoken to about 300, 400 people. And we do have lots of testimonials that very clearly mention that there is nothing that has been positioned to us like this ever
Like
before
this
in the
ever.
past.
Okay, so let's get into the next segment of this podcast. How is user experience driving business impact? So, what is it that the designers, how should they build a business mindset? How should they gauge the impact that they are making from the business point of view? What are your thoughts on that? How should they be able to do that?
Sure. I think there is a lot of study that already displays the confidence on customer experience and user experience. Um, some to quote, the Forrester's study very clearly mentions that if you get to invest rightly in the customer experience, there is a potential that you would have increased the return on investment by 9,900%.
Wow.
And there is also a study from Avaya that again proves the same thing, that if you are a customer experience leader, and this basically is aimed at the organizations. Customer experience leaders, they are majorly seen to be on the top of the S&P 500 indexes as well. These are certain parameters that you can always see from an external perspective, which have outrightly been telling that, guys, you got to focus on the customers first. Forget about the fact that you have some money, you want to like even create the trash and then your salesman will go and sell. Maybe that kind of attitude has to change to you got to create what customers are really asking for, what customers are finding problematic towards. So getting out of the boundary, bringing that data, that understanding into the culture has always been the norm. Now, it has always been the norm from asking for a business to run in a proper direction. That's what I mean. Oh, um, so how exactly should the designers get started with adding business value from the user experience standpoint? Is I so wish that someone would have said them that that's their purpose. Yeah. Instead of like making
I know that users and customers are important, but if you do not align yourself towards business as well, you will not survive as a designer in that organization, because as long as you're not helping your company make money, and you're just focused on what users want.
right.
I mean, they wouldn't find the need of you being there as a designer.
Yes, and
You need to be able to balance these two roles in the right way, is what I
you're
believe.
absolutely right. I think when you have to evaluate a UX manager's ability, a manager who is actually supposed to handle a team of people, you have to check in the stages of those organizations where chucking out of people is going on.
Layoffs.
The layoffs. And if a design manager has not done a good job of justifying that they really are adding value as a UX team, then you will be the first team which actually gets out because you don't seem like adding the right kind of business value. So you want to assess a manager's capability, check as to whether he is doing a good job in selling the right kind of services in the business value proposition perspective.
Okay.
Um,
How should a designer say, starting off, say at least maybe, I mean, with 3 years of experience perhaps, because that's when I believe they understand that they need to move towards more than using tools.
right.
So I would want to give 3 years of experience to these people. At that point of time, how do they, start, or how do they over time build the idea of having this business mindset, or work towards having this business mindset with any work that they pick up?
Right. Okay. I see it from two perspectives. The first one is they have to start understanding many different kinds of metrics that they are capable of influencing. And when I speak of it for the first time, people will be like, "What are you talking about?" Because for many of people, it must be very new that we are going and telling them that if you are asking for your organization to spend about 1,000 rupees on the user research, then you have to give them back 10,000 rupees, or at least those 1,000 rupees back, right? So they have to start understanding the basic metrics at least, such as engagement metrics, Of course, they are not directly telling as to how exactly are you translating the investment into numbers, but starting from engagement metrics, starting from behavioral metrics. Engagement metrics could be as simple as page per views, or the conversion rate, the retention rate, the churn rate, or it could be business metrics as well as to return on investment.
Hmm.
A very simple example to be quoted is, will you be able to estimate as to how much are you asking for an investment to work on a project from your organization? Say you're working on a project, your salaries are quoting to be about 1 lakh per month, and your tools and the participants money that you have to provide to in the incentives that you provide quotes to about another 1 lakh. So if an organization is spending about 2 lakhs in 1 month on a given project on you, are you the person who is translating those 2 lakhs into at least 4 lakhs, at least 20 lakhs? Are you capable of really turning those investments into properly return on investment calculations? And you got to start from that standpoint. It's very difficult because you might have not done this for 3 years and suddenly you get up someday and then start asking about, oh, so this is the success metric and I want to calculate as to how much investment am I bringing back to you. People usually do not take you in the right direction. They don't appreciate the fact that what's really happened to you suddenly, right? So they definitely can start with metrics to begin with. And second thing says, second step to take into account is understand as to where are the business objectives emerging from. There is no business that runs on the factors of let's just have fun. Let's just create something which is pretty. We are actually trying to create pretty because we want to make money, and businesses are to be valuable, to be purpose driven, and their value usually is seen from the perspective that there is money that is coming back when we invest in. So be in places where such kind of goals are being structured. Be the person who actually also influences those goals as well. It is firstly important that you be in the places where goals are structured, but also be the person who knows how to talk that language as well. Does not come on day zero, day one, might take about years, but know how to change your hats from being a business oriented person to a researcher to a data analyst person to a UI designer, but get to know as to how exactly do you change the hats from being one person to another person over the course of various design stages.
Let's move on to the next segment. I would like to talk about the rise of surface level design with the Instagram and Reels and YouTube coming into the picture. We are just at the surface level with everything that we speak of on these platforms. What is your take on it? Do you have any interesting stories to share?
Sure, yeah, many. Um, so people actually coming and trying to showcase it. So there is a version and then there is a B version. If you were a user, not even if you were a user, which one would you choose? And in most of these situations, you wouldn't understand as to who are you as a user, what kind of role are you supposed to play. And there are a lot of people who are just trying to choose as to which is whether they are going with A or B. Does not really matter what exactly are the cases in which they have to choose. That's one. I think that's absolutely stupid. If at all you're trying to position yourself as a subject matter expert of UX design, please don't do that. At least give the context. That's basically what I would like to tell with respect to that. Um, on the other side, Almas, I think when we try to create reels, we try to create the YouTube videos. It more is on the lines of creating an engagement rather than really, driving the purpose of being a UX designer. And I'll give you an example. I wanted to teach you thematic analysis, and which actually is an analytical method that you utilize when you have to perform qualitative research. And when you collect the qualitative data, you have to perform thematic analysis. Now, imagine that I'm supposed to sell that. I would say the thematic analysis is super easy. Come learn with me. It is not. It really is not, but that's the kind of hook that I would utilize. So it wouldn't make sense. I would like to grab as many views, as many impressions as possible. And the right way of going about doing that is just give them what they're looking for or create a dissonance in the right possible way. Um, and that actually has been harming the entire way of learning what user experience is. Especially
People are just focused on the deliverables, the good looks, the nice things, and the influencers on the other side are looking for views and
because you give
number
them
of
what they
followers.
want.
Yeah.
And
I have a really interesting story. I think it was around 7, 8 months ago. I saw a reel where this guy, he's taking
I thought we were screaming a little. Do you want to scream? Yeah.
Okay. um, yeah. So I came across a reel where this guy is, he's standing in front of the mirror, and he's like, the reel goes like, if you want to, be a really good UX designer, do this. And then there's this monologue of all these flashy, good-looking, aesthetic, minimalistic screens, websites,
Yeah.
basically going one after the other. And then I actually was so tempted to go and comment and say that's not how you tell people, what UX design is. And first of all, that's not UX design. You're just showing them good templates of websites. Maybe you would have built it, good for you.
Right. Yeah.
But that's not how you tell them that I will teach you, or this is UX design that I'm going to teach you. There's a lot more to UX design.
You go that way, I think you will find about another 1,000, 2,000 people who would actually be trying to convince you that what you're talking about is not design. Yeah. So, and I don't think
I actually went and commented.
Oh, you did?
Yes. Yeah, so I did, but then, yeah, we did get into a bit of an argument.
Right.
Yeah, but then I just let it go at a point because
Sometimes
it was
it's better
not
to just leave a
necessary.
fool for towards his foolishness. Yeah. So,
Okay.
so yeah, no, I don't think you can ever teach a fool. You just have to let go of it. That's what I believe in. Otherwise, I don't think you'll be able to change the world from their perspectives ever. And I really believe in the fact that we are convinced in our heads that what we do is like the best way of actually doing things, no matter whether it is right or wrong.
Wrong. Yeah.
One of the other aspects that I have seen where these small short videos as well as YouTube reels are taking away the reality part of it.
Right.
When you work on the projects, you should know that it is not the ability of executing those design processes. It rather is about working with people. And I remember when I got started, I used to work in a service organization. I had a very good mentor, and once he comes and says, "Murad, what exactly is the biggest problem that you have to solve being a designer?" And then I am like, you have to understand users. And he's like, yeah, that you will do because you are supposed to do it as a part of UX designer. But the later, very late in your career, do you understand that it's people? The problem of people actually is the biggest problem that
The
comes
people you work with?
Yes, people.
Okay.
Yeah, not the people whom you're creating solutions for. Right.
Okay.
So it's the people who actually break the entire process. And somebody is trying to gatekeep the data that you wanted to have access towards. Somebody is trying to tell that no, that's not what you are supposed to do. I'm going to be the person who will give you a direction. And then somebody is going to tell you exactly as to don't waste time, churn the ideas, churn the screens that I am already giving you a complete clarity towards. So what happens when it comes to these short reels is they don't actually talk about the reality that you have to pass through if you have to work on such kind of projects.
Right.
And there are iterations involved. There is oversimplification that has been drawn unnecessarily because you just want to drive as much as impressions possible,
As much
and engagement possible.
Yeah.
And that just does the thing. So if you ever want to get a holistic understanding of anything, you got to really slow down. You got to have that experience of seeing things from end to end. Do not just believe in the fact that someone else comes and says it's easy, it's difficult, and then you let go of it, or you start believing in a little too much. That is what your reels do at this point of time. They are very much influenceable, and you fall for it, and you get to start looking at the fact that smaller consumptions, smaller tidbits is what is going to help you learn all the things in your life. Not just with respect to this, they are free. So we love what comes free. And there are a lot of people who come and tell me, how exactly have you learned user experience design? And they're like, oh, I follow someone on Instagram. I follow someone on LinkedIn. I'm like, that's okay. Following is okay. What have you learned? being a part of the network and then clicking the pictures, networking conferences, if you are being a part of the networking conferences, clicking the pictures, putting it on your social media platforms does not really tell that you are a learned person. It just says that, okay, you
You're
have
a well
actually
connected person, perhaps.
exactly. Have you have network? That's good for you. You have stepped out of your comfort zone. But what have you learned from user experience? That would require of you to really sit in a classroom and then learn properly alongside a mentor.
Which would require a good amount of investment on time, on money. And believe me, I have heard this. Uh, I have heard this from one of my mentor in the past. He says, whatever is available to you for free is not valuable.
Yeah.
So even when it comes, I'll give you an example of using softwares. So softwares give you freemium versions, right? So why do they gatekeep the good features for premium versions? Is because they know the value of it. They know how much of a value those features could give you.
Right. Yeah.
So they're just going to release those easy things that you can use and get away with. And that's what free things do. Even when you're going to look at it from a learning point of view, if there is someone who's giving you out things for free, they are going to be the basic things that are available to you everywhere across the world.
Right. Yeah.
And if you are looking for something premium, something good and the right things to learn from, be open to investing in it. Be open to investing money and time in it. And only then will you get access to those premium things that will add value to your life,
Yeah,
is what I would believe.
because when the product is free, you are the product, and that's what the saying goes. I also feel like there are hundreds of other people who have been talking in their own ways. So there is this one person who comes and says that you got to make use of neomorphic approaches at this point of time because it's trending. So
Trends.
does not really mean that it's trending, and then if in the organizations, in the real projects, you will be able to apply them because trends take their own sweet time to really capture the market as well, and everybody is trying to put across their thoughts without even validating.
Right.
Is there a scientific viability that you have been able to assess before you really accepted someone else's ideas? Have you empirically tested when someone comes and says that this is the approach that you're supposed to take? Or were you so mesmerized by the kind of storyline that someone created that you were like, no questions asked, I'm going to just make use of it the way how it is? So, without really having a holistic perspective, if you are really falling for these tidbits, which do not give away a complete, a storyline to you, you maybe are not going in the right direction. Maybe no, you actually are not going in the right direction. You got to invest time, you got to see it from the right angles, and you got to put your efforts into it from end to end. And as much as possible, work with people,
Get a mentor.
yeah, who have seen these things and know exactly as to how certain things will not work, how certain things will definitely work,
Right.
and then work alongside them.
Yeah. So this gets me to the next question. How does user feedback impact on the designs, like for continuous improvement on the designs?
I think that's the only thing that actually has to keep driving them further, Ron. That's another thing that we always have to keep an eye out for almost at every stage of our process as well. For example, you built a proto persona, a hypothetical representation of who your users are, and you you collect the feedback from the users, you perform the qualitative interview, and then you figure out that no, that's not what the persona is supposed to be. So you uplifted and then brought in a lot more empathy towards the real kind of persona that you were supposed to bring in. That's where the qualitative personas come in a picture. More feedback, more responses, and you were able to statistically signify that the kind of personas that you could build up were appropriate. You spoke to about 500 more users, and then you understood that I'll be able to strongly present persona right now. That's where the statistical personas come in a picture, which means every deliverable that you create, which brings you closer towards the outcome, works on the grounds of collecting feedback from your users. Um, what happens with respect to some of the UX designers who also have been in the field for a very long time, calling themselves to be senior UX designers, lead UX designers? And I think this is a natural transition that humans go through. Is I have been in the field for 10 years. I have seen hundreds of such products out there, and I understand as to how these products actually operate.
Okay.
So there is this confidence that starts emerging where they start believing the fact that now I know how to think about how the users will start behaving without even talking to the users. So for them, getting convinced over the fact that I know everything because I have been in the field for a very long time, also in itself starts taking away the users. And then they start inputting their subjective biases so deeply that feedback will take a backseat. And then they are the only people who will be driving the solutions.
Right.
This is this maybe happens with some percentage of designers, but is the most prevalent in almost many other verticals with respect to, say, product management, business analyst, or so, because they are positioned in places where they have to take decisions.
Right.
And when they take decisions, it does not necessarily mean that they have taken right decisions. That's what I keep telling. Just because you are in a powerful position and you can drive decisions does not really mean that you have taken right decisions. You just have taken decisions in order to push forward. That's it. So you want to take the right decisions, go get that check from your users, collect the feedback, and then maybe you might have done it the right time the first time. And you keep doing this over and over. That's where we have lots of iterations. Any design process that you take up, except for the waterfall, development process, everything is iterative in nature, and it is so iterative that even after just completing one step, you can go back to the zeroth step again. Even after completing the third step, you can go back to the zeroth step again. So it's extremely iterative. Iterations happen only on one front, that you collect the feedback, you get better in understanding what your users want. And then when you get better in understanding what your users want, that is when maybe you will end up creating the solutions that users might find desirable by the end of it.
Got it. Okay, I think we've come to the end of our podcast. I would like to ask you some questions where I could like to conclude as to what are your thoughts on it. Um, what are your thoughts on, how should UX design be perceived by businesses and designers? What is it different for these two people? What are the key takeaways for businesses and designers when it comes to UX design?
All right. Yeah. I first things with respect to businesses, and it puts me in a very good position to answer this question because I have been a designer for a very long time. I also have been a businessman myself. I also own a alongside you a business as well. So I think I can definitely bring in both the perspectives over here. From businesses, I think you will have to start accepting the fact that if you really want user experience designers to bring in the right kind of outcomes that you are seeking, let them do their job. Right. As much as possible, give them that space. I know that you are very much convinced in your heads that you are the only people who can give it a proper direction. Let people do what they're supposed to do. Give them that space. And you don't know as to what kind of wonders they can bring to your table. And when I say this, it simply means that with respect to that of the UX designers, let them be the people who understand who your customers are. You're not the only person who is supposed to actually understand the customers. To be honest, I actually keep telling this to people. If there is a business analyst who comes and says that I know everything about users, I have studied those users, why don't you ask me the questions? And I keep telling them that if this is the person who has built empathy towards users, then he's the right person to go ahead and also turn the screens as well. You don't need designers. So if you want designers to really work in the right
I think
context,
good chunk of business analysts and product designers also do that job.
right?
They get to the point of even creating wireframes, and then they give it off to UX designers to put colors and visual designs in.
When you don't know what you're supposed to do, you overarch. You do what you're not supposed to do because there is no limitations. And like I said, when you have power, and if there is responsibilities associated with it, like with power comes responsibilities. And people who are really in places where they can drive decisions, they need to be extra careful. And when they take decisions, they are not supposed to really just let go of all the quality just in the name of them being capable of driving the decisions. Sorry, I forgot the question.
How should designers
Right.
learn from
Right. So, with respect to businesses, I think they have to first give that particular space to the user experience designers. They have to let them build empathy towards users, spend money on research. if not lakhs and lakhs of money, at least a limited amount of money that you can spend on research, because the more you understand about your customers, the better solutions will ever emerge.
And the better money you will make.
Definitely,
eventually.
yeah. And like I actually said you in the past as well, the investment in user research as well as in the overall customer experience has returns that you had never thought of. And there has never been a product that let go of user research, building empathy towards customers, and then built a solution and has cracked the market. That does not happen. That's rare. That must be 1 out of 100 or never. So
Yeah, because you got lucky.
you just got lucky. That's it. That's what it could tell. So as businesses, give them that authority, give them those spaces where they can go about creating right kind of solutions that they have already evaluated with the users, and then have come with a lot of confidence back to you telling that this is going to work. And
What are your key takeaways for the designers?
yes, I was getting to that. I think as much as I would like the organizations to change and then become design centric, um, the cultures are created by the people who work inside it. It's like the government, the democracy, and it is made by people.
Mhm.
So if you are the right kind of designer who knows how exactly should you be able to understand who your users are, and then make use of that information in order to drive the business, and have shown over time this ability of driving business because of the value that you're adding, then you're doing the right job, which mostly means what? You got to stop only creating those beautiful screens and then thinking that you have done a good job.
Mm.
You have done a part of the job where you have convinced yourself that you have done a good job, and maybe the person who is going to make use of your system will not even find it good looking. I really like pink color. Not that I like, but I'm telling I like pink color, which does not really mean that my users will like pink color. They might actually find it really feminine, whatever. Where are they coming from? That kind of their cultural predispositions without understanding them. If I have created a color choice, or for that matter, the entire journey, I will not be able to resonate what they want. So unless you have been able to stripe these areas of spending time in convincing your organizations that this is the right way of going about it, making them realize that there is amount, there is time, there is budget that is structured out only to bring in value. And if you only think that you are aligned only towards the visual design deliverables, then you're not doing a good job. You got to upskill yourself. You got to really make yourself position from the skills perspective of especially the leadership segments, where you got to know that firstly convince yourself, build an understanding that you can't assume everything about the users. You got to go ahead, study, and then you also got to sell that understanding towards your entire organization, and then maybe change the culture from the point that you were a screen churning machine to a point where you are really driving the business. Okay, that's the kind of transition that I would look for.
Right.
Design.
Right. One more thing I'd like to understand. How do you expect the design community, especially the early stage designers, to shift their mindset from being aesthetic oriented to more on experience oriented?
Wow, okay. That would be the most difficult thing to do, because I think everybody would like to be a mentor. And it's like this. I know how to sweep my room, so I'm gonna go and teach sweeping anyone else on the ground as well. So the BBMP would also be my student from there on. So it's like this, where I just know shit, and I'm gonna keep teaching no matter what the case is. So you first thing what I would like of designers to do is start evaluating. Look at the fact that, is this me? Are these like some things that are just sounding right, but they are not relevant? They are not practically possible. So try to evaluate from those standpoints first, because what is easy does not always mean that you get to really make use of it and get the benefits out of it. But user research in most of the cases is difficult, and that's why you don't see a lot of people teaching, and that's where we come in as well, like I said. And just because it's difficult does not really mean that you should not spend efforts into it. Possibly, if you take up the design processes, then you are supposed to actually learn that first. So do not fall for easy traps. Make sure that you are a process oriented strategic person. Do not try to make only your boss happy. Do not also try to make an enemy out of him, because you will understand that no matter how much ever you would like to drive the business as well as the users, you also got to work with people. So be rightfully justified with your people, know exactly as to when to hold your positions, your grounds, as well as know how to create those win-to-win strategies, know how exactly to collaborate as well. Because when it comes to design, it is never a one person's objective to achieve. When teams come together is when you will be able to create the best user experience. So I know it takes a lot of time for us UX designers to really get to that particular stage where they understand that it's not me. There is a team that is supposed to support me in order to create that experience. I think if you get to that stage as early as you can, that would be the right trajectory that they would have taken in order to get to it.
Let's start. I would like to focus a little bit on audience-centric questions. So I have a few questions that I would like to run with you. How does one shift from designing screens to designing outcomes?
Okay. Um, I think the first objective to really understand over here is you were never meant for creating screens. Screens are props. You were supposed to drive outcomes. So position yourself early on into the processes. Be in places where these business goals are structured out, and do not ever create anything that is just for the sake of process. Create everything and anything that is required for you to bring closer towards the outcomes.
Got it. Why asking what problem am I solving changes everything?
One, I think I was in one of these recruitments for a design manager, and then the design director asks me as to what is that one question that you would ask your recruiters to check as to do they know everything or not. And I think the suitable answer even in those cases was, do they know how to pick the right problems? And when you have actually identified and well defined the right problem, you have almost done, you have almost solved the problem. So that's the best way to go about. So do not be the person who actually identifies only the solutions from the point that you want to drive the deliverables. Be the person who knows how to really solve the problem. And can you please repeat the question? I think I just changed.
Why asking what problems am I solving changes everything?
Oh, we get to see a lot of portfolios where people have been dumping their deliverables, and we go and tell them that you are good creating all those deliverables, not the person who actually can solve the problem. So, unless you have solved a real problem and then exactly knows how to story tell, that's the right way to go about it. We actually value those people who create
Recruiters
solutions.
value those people.
Yeah, we as recruiters definitely value those people. We recruit a lot of people. That's what I meant. um, and when you have solved the problems, that's when you have presented it in the right way. The deliverables will not make sense whatsoever.
Right. Okay. Small actionable steps for new designers to grow beyond surface level work.
um, Understand that you're not the hero. There are people who are going to influence the experience. Know it as early as you can. One. Second is make sure that you do not follow the mentors who I would like to label as pseudo mentors in the name of user experience, who have been teaching you the visual designs, or logo creation or graphic designs or tool specific learnings. Get away from there as much as you can. Try to build real empathy, and this real empathy does not necessarily come only from secondary research. Make sure that you invest your efforts as well as your organization's efforts towards the primary research, where you get to talk to people and then get into their shoes with the real empathy.
Okay. Why is pretty not equal to powerful, but useful is equal to powerful?
You must have this happens with almost everyone, I suppose. There are certain things that you find pretty, you spend money on them, and then you get those products, but you just keep them at home, you don't use them.
Because they're not usable.
Yeah.
They just look good.
They just look good, they're not functional, and there are many things like that. You look at them and then they're so pretty.
So pretty is powerful is good for a fraction of time,
Right.
and then it's useless later.
Yes, and that's what we talk about it. Something that looks really good, you get attracted to it, you look at it, you almost interact it the first time, but when you start working with it is when you realize that pretty is not powerful. It's usefulness which is actually powerful.
Right. Got it. Okay, let's get into the next segment. It's a rapid fire round. I would like to ask a few questions and understand your views. I want you to answer me as quickly as possible, okay?
Okay, I'll try.
Okay. Favorite beautifully designed app and why?
Mm, Airbnb,
Why?
this helps travel, get to places which you will not be able to explore otherwise.
Okay. Common UX mistake you still see way too often.
Okay. Believing in your subjective biases, believing in the fact that what I think, how I perceive life is the only way by which our users also perceive their life as. Yeah.
Okay. Real world experience you'd love to redesign.
Indian Railways,
Okay. Designers should stop doing dash.
churn screens based on someone else's ideas. In this particular case, maybe even go ahead and then ask them to churn the screens by themselves if they have their ideas.
Okay. A guilty pleasure tool.
Going behind data, driving decisions using data, trying to collect the data.
Okay. Although it's not a tool.
It
So do you,
definitely is
do you
a
use
tool of
Excel a lot?
decisions. Sure, yeah.
A brand that nails UX every time.
Apple,
Okay. Worst design product you have used recently. Design in 3 words.
strategy, structure, delivery.
Good design
Should never be aligned only towards what business wants or what your stakeholders who have decision power wants. It should be more about a combination of what users plus business plus a technology feasibility wants.
So I'd like to end this podcast by saying that if there is one thing for you to remember from this episode is just that great design doesn't just look good, it works beautifully.
Let's go beyond pretty designs. Let's solve real problems because that's where the real power of designers is.
Okay, thanks for tuning into Experience Wave podcast. Don't forget to follow us for more such episodes and let's keep riding the wave of great design.